So how is the economy out there? How are we doing? We've been through the first 10 years of this 21st century. Well, it was one of the worst for the American economy since the Great Depression. You know, I've often wondered what it would be like if we had the poor people doing the news. You know, I'm not poor. I got a good job. Life is pretty good. And I come to this job and I think about, okay, what would it be like for the average Joe who doesn't make six figures and, you know, has a family of four and is struggling to get there? What would the reporting have been like on health care, on anything? Here's the bottom line. There was zero net job creation over the last decade. Got that? Zero. See, we had two recessions. Economic output rose at its slowest rate since the 1930s. Those Republicans did us right, didn't they? But there is some optimism for the new year, and I want you to be optimistic. Now, these numbers might not mean much to you, but the fact is the Federal Reserve is forecasting an average domestic product growth of 2.5% to 3.5% in 2010, GDP. And they predict the unemployment rate will dip below 10%. Who wouldn't take that? But New York Times columnist Paul Krugman warns that 2010 may not bring the economic recovery that everybody's talking about. And he writes, quote, the odds are that any good economic news you hear in the near future will be a blip, not an indication that we're on our way to sustained recovery. Will the Fed realize before it's too late that the job of fighting the slump isn't finished? Will Congress do the same? If they don't, 2010 will be a year that began in false economic hope and ended grief. If I may add to that, and I'm writing a book on this, it's going to be released later this year, The Late Great Middle Class. Don't have the title down totally right now. If we cannot, as a country, revitalize the middle class in this country, so to speak, get the average Joe's feeling good with some disposable income, it's over. It will be over as we know America, unless we do something to rebuild the middle class in this country. People that can go out and buy a washing machine with cash, okay, and not credit card. People that can go out and actually pay their bills and have a little bit left over, the way my mom and dad had it, to do something for the 5 kids, if you know what I mean. So how is this is Obama's heavy lift in 2010, and the Democrats, for that matter, the Progressive Caucus, I believe, is where the steroids have got to come from, for lack of a better term. But let me bring in Robert Reich, former Secretary of Labor under the Clinton administration, professor of public policy, University of California at Berkeley. Mr. Reich, if I'm wrong, please correct me on this. Good to have you with us tonight, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Ed. And also, let me commend you for your New Year's resolution to be even more liberal and more outspoken this year. We need that.
I think that's the only way we're going to get anything done around here.
I agree.
What has to happen? What bricks have to be laid for this whole thing to turn around, in your opinion, for the next decade, if we can look out?
Well, it's more than economic growth. I mean, you know, we've had economic growth in the past. The trouble is it has not trickled down to average working people. And unless average working people, the broad middle class, has enough money in their pockets, has good jobs, it's not just jobs, but good jobs, they cannot turn around and spend enough to keep the economy going. They have to go deeper and deeper into debt, and we know what debt does. I mean, you create these giant bubbles. So the major objective, the number one objective domestically of the administration has got to be more jobs and more good jobs.
Well, the economic stimulus package, which, you know, I obviously believed in and still do because a lot of the money hasn't been spent, that's just a foot in the door, so to speak.
It's just a big, that's just the beginning. And the stimulus really isn't enough to keep the recovery going because a lot of people, I mean, 1 out of 5 Americans is still unemployed or underemployed. And beyond that, the quality of jobs that the people who are employed have continue to deteriorate. I mean, we are saying over the last 30 years, you look at a typical male wage, a typical male worker in this society, adjust for inflation, and that typical male worker is not earning earning any more on an hourly basis than he earned 30 years ago. Women are doing slightly better, but that's because they started way behind men, and they're still behind men. Look, nobody is doing well except people at the top. We have, right now, Wall Street is on the brink of giving hundreds, well, at least tens of billions. Somebody just reported 200 billion of bonuses to its top traders and executives. I mean, what kind of an economy is this?
Well, it's one for the top 2%, and something's got to change here. But what's different now, Mr. Reich? You know, you helped create 22 million jobs. Was it just the dot-com boom, or were there different things happening in the Clinton administration that maybe we're not paying attention to and catching on to that maybe should be done now? What do you think?
Well, there was a real emphasis, Ed, on job creation, on investing in people, not only education, but also roads and bridges, infrastructure investment in research and development. The whole notion in the 1990s was you invest in the ground, you invest in the bottom of the economy, and you grow the economy from the bottom. You don't simply bail out banks. You don't give rich tax breaks. You don't expect that the economy is going to grow from the top. It doesn't grow from the top. You've got to get the bottom going. You've got to get the middle class with more wages and better jobs. That was the entire emphasis.
Mr. Reich, great to have you on tonight. Thanks so much. We'll do it again.
Thanks, Ed.
You bet. Coming up, the middle class finished 09, I guess you could say pinching pennies, scraping them together, trying to make it all happen, while Wall Street finished up 20%. Eliot Spitzer will explain just how we can get some of that money back in 2010. That's next. Ended on a high note for Wall Street, with the Dow finishing up almost 19%. Good for you if you're in it. Meanwhile, folks on Main Street getting burned big time. Last year, the government used taxpayer money to buy toxic assets from big banks. That program was supposed to, help get the economy going after, some tough times. But instead, some of these banks went out and bought more risky home loans. They were allowed to go do business as usual, profiting off your tax dollars, lack of oversight. And now, of course, that's really a bad word, oversight. Former governor of New York joining us tonight, Eliot Spitzer, to tell us just how we can straighten this whole thing out. What do we have to look forward to? Mr. Spitzer, great to have you on tonight.
Thank you so much, and Happy New Year to you.
And Happy New Year to you. What's the middle class have to look forward to in 2010 when they see this kind of stuff in the news?
Unfortunately, more of the same. And as you just were discussing with Robert Reich, what we are seeing is a redistribution of wealth in this country in the wrong direction. And that's what those bonuses really reflect to people. Billions and billions of dollars going to the very upper crust, no new job creation for those in the middle class over a decade, and wages have been stagnant at best for those who are working. And so what we need to do is reconfigure this economy. And the idea that a number of folks have had is to begin to use two levers of power that we don't often enough think about. One is as consumers, and two is as owners of the companies that we're talking about. Consumers, here's a very simple idea. There's something called moveyourmoney.info. Take your savings accounts, your checking accounts, move them out of those big TARP recipient banks that are not doing the right thing with our money, and move to community banks that are doing the right thing. They're lending to homeowners in a good way, the community banks that is, lending to small businesses. Use your power as the consumer of banking services just the way you pick a car. You buy the car you want, choose the bank you want based upon whether that bank is doing the right thing. Go to moveyourmoney.info. It's an amazing website, lets you find where there's a community bank right near you in your neighborhood that is doing the right thing. It's like watching It's a Wonderful Life and seeing Jimmy Stewart do the right thing with his bank. It's a brilliant idea.
Well, I think there's a lot of Americans out there that think, me doing this, it won't make a difference. But if enough Americans do respond to this, it'll shift the paradigm and the discussion will get a lot of people's attention.
We've got to do that, Ed, because we're doing, frankly, we're doing what's easy, which is to blame just Wall Street and say to Congress, fix it, or to say the regulators fix it. The regulators won't fix it. They never have. They won't get it right. We as consumers can do it. And the other way is as owners. We own these companies. We own the shares. Get the pension funds, get the mutual funds, get the state controllers who control these pension funds to begin to change the pay paradigm, not only on Wall Street, but also across corporate America, where we give people money for bad performance.
Yeah, but now, Eliot, are these banks actually at greater risk right now with some of the paper that they've picked up?
I don't think we know. And the amazing thing is I speak to people on the street all the time. They tell me there is still inadequate information to know whether or not what they have on their balance sheet is good or bad.
Think about what you just
we just
said
don't
there.
know.
Yeah, just think about what you just said there. We have forked out billions of dollars, and we really don't know just how they're totally operating or what complete risk we're at right now.
We don't know what they're doing with the money.
Yeah.
In other words, are they lending it in a way that's good for the economy? Or are they just investing it overseas? Or are they just involved in proprietary trading on Wall Street? These are the questions that should be asked. I mean, look, Ben Bernanke gave a fascinating speech the other day. He said, don't blame us. We're just the Fed. We were controlling monetary policy. Wait a minute. The Fed, the New York Fed in particular, had people at every major bank. They should have been examining all these things for years. And so, yes, it's easy, as I just did, to blame the regulators. What we've got to do is come up with the creative solutions, use your power as a consumer, as an owner, to get the way these businesses do business to change.
Eliot Spitzer, great to have you with us tonight. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ed.
We'll see you a lot in 2000.